Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a totally fascinating reality, how the United States and Mexico function not just as neighbors, but as a deeply intertwined living ecosystem. Now, when we talk about global trade, it is so easy to get lost in the spreadsheets and the abstract numbers. But today, we're going to look at this relationship through a completely different lens. We are going to see how these two economies are fundamentally built on human connections and intercultural exchange. Think about this for a second. What if a border is actually a bridge? It's a pretty provocative question, right? Rather than just a dividing line, we really need to look at this 2,000-mile boundary as a bustling intersection of families, cultures, and daily commerce. The physical landscape might be separated by a line on a map, sure, but the reality on the ground is this continuous, vibrant exchange that's evolved over centuries. It's an intercultural bridge shaping the daily lives of millions of people on both sides. To really grasp the scale of that bridge, you just have to look at the numbers. Between mid-2025 and mid-2026, bilateral trade hit a staggering $916 billion. Just wrap your head around that for a moment. That translates to over $1 billion in commerce crossing the border every single day. But remember, this isn't just money changing hands. It represents the labor, the design, and the shared efforts of two cultures working in tandem to build things together. Section 1. Our shared supply chain. Let's look at how we actually build things together. So, the secret sauce behind that massive volume is a concept called co-production. It's an ecosystem where we literally build products together across borders. A massive 56% of goods imported by the US are actually manufacturing inputs, with a third of those coming directly from Mexico and Canada. This means we don't just buy finished items from Mexico. We rely on a shared workforce to assemble the actual pieces of our modern lives. You see this perfectly in the automotive sector. I mean, a car doesn't just get built in one spot anymore. The US might design the components, then they get exported to Mexico for assembly by skilled laborers there, and then re-imported right back to the US. In fact, the parts in the car sitting in your driveway likely crossed the border up to 7 or 8 times before that vehicle was completely finished. It is a true binational effort. And this creates an incredible symbiotic overlap. The US exports tech, auto parts, and machinery to Mexico. And what does Mexico export back to the US? Well, tech, autos, and machinery. Both nations are exporting the exact same categories to each other because our industries rely on this shared manufacturing loop. Our workers are essentially colleagues working on a massive international assembly line. Section 2. Human and cultural ties. Let's look beyond the economics to the actual heart of this supply chain. Because here's the thing, you simply cannot separate the movement of goods from the movement of the people who make those goods. This incredible volume of trade is really just a natural consequence of our extensive familial and cultural ties. The economic reality is totally anchored by deep intercultural connections. People cross this border every single day in both directions, for work, to see family, even just for shopping. And the financial impact of those human ties, it's absolutely massive. The growth in remittances alone is incredible. Mexican workers in the US, participating in foundational sectors like agriculture and construction, send billions of dollars back home to support their families. This money goes toward basic needs like rent, food, and medicine, and it's actually estimated to account for up to 3% of Mexico's total GDP. It fundamentally fuels both economies from the ground up. But, it goes both ways, and it's way bigger than just remittances. From millions of Mexican tourists spending billions of dollars in the US to Mexican retail chains like the convenience store OXXO expanding straight into Texas. Human movement and cultural integration are the literal blood flow of this regional bloc. We are constantly sharing our food, our retail experiences, and our daily lives. Section 3. Nearshoring and China's role. It's a very complex triangle shaping our shared space. Now, you've probably heard the buzzword nearshoring thrown around recently. It's the practice of transferring business operations to a nearby country to reduce supply chain vulnerabilities. To lower costs and stay close to U.S. consumers, multinational corporations are shifting their production out of Asia and moving it straight into Mexican assembly campuses. They want to be a part of that interconnected North American family we've been talking about. But here is where we get a fascinating twist. Chinese foreign direct investment in Mexico has been growing rapidly, with some estimates reaching over $20 billion. Chinese companies are heavily investing in Mexico to maintain their access to the North American market. And this rapid influx of capital is raising some pretty significant security and economic concerns in Washington, especially regarding connected vehicles and technology, creating a highly complex geopolitical triangle between the US, Mexico, and China. Section 4. Trade Wars and the USMCA. Let's dig into the rules governing this ecosystem. To really understand today's friction, we gotta look at the timeline. We started with the foundational NAFTA agreement back in 1994, which formally linked our economies. That evolved into the USCMCA in 2020, and now, well, we are looking ahead to a critical, high-stakes joint review of this treaty scheduled for 2026. The rules of our shared ecosystem are about to be put under a very intense microscope. Heading into that 2026 review, U.S. negotiators are targeting some very specific issues as leverage. They're looking at restrictions on Chinese goods transshipping through Mexico, pushing for even stricter rules on where automotive parts originate, and addressing non-market policies. The goal from the U.S. perspective is to protect domestic industries and national security, all while navigating this highly integrated space. For businesses on the ground, the stakes are literally as high as they get. Impartially speaking, while over 85% of Mexican goods currently enter the U.S. duty-free because they comply with USMCA rules, there is a looming threat of steep 25 to 30% tariffs on non-compliant items. That dynamic is injecting a ton of uncertainty into the market right now, making foreign investors hesitate before they make any long-term commitments in the region. Section 5. An interdependent future. Let's look at what lies ahead. Because our cultures and labor forces are so deeply intertwined, policy decisions don't just happen in a vacuum. For example, strict border emergency policies and major shifts in migration could theoretically reduce those vital worker remittances by 30%. And economic research suggests that could lower Mexico's GDP growth by nearly 0.75%. Domestic political maneuvers directly and immediately impact the economic stability of families across the entire region. As Mexico's Secretary of Economy Marcelo Ebrard pointed out, Mexico holds structural advantages that competitors just can't easily replicate. He noted, Mexico is the largest trading partner of the United States. That is a real limit that conditions the entire treaty review. Despite tariff threats and political posturing on all sides, our geographic, economic, and deeply cultural reality binds us together in a way that simply cannot be outsourced to another continent. Which leaves us with one final vital thought. If you can't untangle our economies without also untangling the cultures, the families, and the people that drive them, what is the true cost of stepping back from this shared ecosystem? As we approach that massive 2026 USMCA review, it's a question we all need to consider. Will we choose to reinforce this intercultural bridge, or will we try to rebuild the wall?